Hello and welcome everyone. In this video, I'm going to share with you the Stafford Gambit. In this video, we will be learning the concept, tricks and traps and what are the best defense what white can do against the Stafford Gambit. So let's get started. We start our game with e4 and black responds with e5, knight f3 attacking the e5 pawn, and here black, instead of playing the knight to c6, immediately plays the knight to f6. This is called as the Petroff defense or the Russian game. Since the pawn on the e5 square is hanging, white might try to capture it and captures the pawn on the e5 square. Here, instead of recapturing the pawn on the e4 square or giving an attack to the knight, we simply play our knight to c6, setting up the trap. Here, white player might be happy. He has just won an extra pawn on the e5 square, the center pawn. Also, after he captures on the c6 square, then black will recapture, the pawns will be doubled. The pawn structure will be ruined. So white player would be more than happy to capture the knight on the c6 square. Once we do that, we are going to recapture it with a d pawn. D takes on c6. Now since the e4 pawn is in danger, white might try to defend it. There are three top choices how he can defend. He can play his pawn to d3, push the pawn upon e5 square, or he can defend it with knight to c3. In this video, I am going to share all of these three responses and as black what you should do to win the game. Let's first start with pawn to d3 move. After pawn d3, we are going to go for a normal development. We are going to play our bishop to c5, trying to give an attack to his weak f2 square. Now here, any player would generally want to pin your piece. So bishop g5 is another natural looking move, pinning the knight to this queen. But because we have set up this trap, we have a stunning move here. We can play our knight to e4, attacking the f2 square. If white gets greedy and captures your free queen on the d8 square, then he's gone. Because after bishop f2 check, he cannot capture the bishop. The only square king has is to go on the e2 square. Bishop g4 is a beautiful checkmate. Giving away the queen, sacrificing your queen and doing a checkmate with three minor pieces. Okay, let's see. Some of you might say, what if he's not getting greedy and is not capturing the queen on the d8 square? Instead, just capturing the knight on the e4 square with d takes on e4. Well, then also you win the queen. How do you do that? You play a bishop to f2, give a check. King definitely cannot capture it because then the queen is lost. And if he goes up on the e2 square, then you play a bishop to g4, giving a check, and then eventually you're going to win the queen. Correct. Okay. Another move here, after knight takes on e4, if he is not capturing the knight, not capturing the queen, what is the best response that he can do? He can play his bishop back on the e3 square. And then as black, what you can do is you can capture the bishop. He takes it back on the e3 square with f pawn, and then the other diagonal for the king is open. Now you can play your queen to h4, give a check. He cannot go on the e2 square definitely because queen f2 will then be a checkmate. So he will have to block the check. Let's say he blocks the check by g3 pawn. Then you can capture this pawn with your knight. Now you are threatening to capture the rook, also a discovered check. If he captures here the knight, then you win the rook and you are materially ahead. You have the material advantage there as black. What if he is not capturing the knight because the pawn is pinned and let's say he's just moving his rook on the g1 square? Well, then knight e4, queen gives a check. The king cannot come on the e2 square again because queen f2 will be a checkmate. So he definitely have to block the check with his rook. And then best move here is to capture on h2. Because don't capture the rook with the knight, then it will be all equal. The position would be equal. Don't capture on the rook on the g3 square, but capture on the h2 square with the queen. Your threat is again the same, that you want to give a checkmate on the f2 square. So the only way to defend here is to play the rook to g2. He brings his rook to g2 square, and then now you can give a check on h4 again. He now cannot block it. He can come up with his king, and then you first give a check with the bishop. Bishop comes to g4. The rook has to capture it. White has no other choice, and then queen f2 will be a checkmate. So your whole idea there is to give a checkmate on the f2 square. You're just bringing out new pieces, dodging his defense, and then eventually you're going to win the game there. Okay, this was all when he plays his pawn to d3 square. Now let's have a look what if he plays his pawn to e5. So after pawn e5, since our knight is in danger, we would save it and we can go with a knight to e4. Now here, if he gives an attack to a knight by pushing his pawn up on the d3 square, then you just ignore the threat again. And what you can do is play your bishop to c5. If he captures your knight on the e4 square with d takes on e4, then you can play a bishop f2, give a check. Again the same thing, king cannot capture the bishop because then you will win the queen, and if the king comes up, then bishop g4 comes with a skewer. You are going to win the queen with the bishop or with your queen. Anything is fine and you just win the game on the spot. Okay. Now coming back to the move, what if he is not playing his pawn up on the e5 square, not defending it with d3 pawn. Instead, he is now defending the pawn on e4 with his knight to c3. After he plays his knight to c3, you can play bishop c5. We are trying to develop our bishop, do the normal development, attack his f2 square, and also you are preparing your king to castle there. If he also tries to castle on the next move, preparing for castle, developing the bishop on the c4 square, which looks much more natural to us, then you can first play your knight to g4, trying to give an attack to the f2 square with your bishop as well as the knight. The best defense here is to castle, and then comes the stunning move, queen h4. Now queen h4 is threatening a checkmate on the h2 square, and you are attacking this f2 square thrice with your knight, bishop and the queen. Definitely he would want to save the checkmate and he'll go with his pawn to h3. Then there you can first capture on the f2 square with your knight. If the rook captures it back, then you can capture it with the queen and you are ahead in material, ahead in the advantage, and you have a very good advantage with black there. But what if he is not capturing it? Since his queen is under attack, let's say he defends his queen and goes with his queen to the f3 square. Then you first give a double check, play your knight to h3, give a double check. He has to move the king either to h2 or h1. Let's say he moves this to h2 square. Then you give a discovered attack with the queen, discovered check with the queen. You go with your knight to f2 again. If the queen blocks it, then he loses the queen because you can capture it with the knight. And if he comes back with his king on the g1 square, then queen to h1 will be a fantastic checkmate there. Correct? Okay. So now let's come back to the move. What if he is not playing his bishop to c4? Instead, he is playing his bishop to e2. Now, idea behind bishop e2 is again preparing your king for castle, and second is to protect this g4 square so that the knight cannot jump in on g4. The bishop and the queen attacks that square. Well, then you can first start the attack by playing your queen to d4, attacking the f2 square. He has only way to defend it is to castle, and then you can regain your pawn on the e4 square. Knight takes on e4. If he recaptures your knight, you are happy with your pieces. Look at the black pieces, they are so active. Next, you are ready to castle. The bishop and knight, both of the pieces would jump on the king's side to give a deadly attack on the king. So as black, you are still doing better. Now last, let's have a look at what is the best defense from white side here. So after knight c3, bishop c5, instead of going with his bishop to c4 or e2, white should play his pawn to h3, guarding this g4 square, not allowing knight g4 in future as well. So here, if he plays his pawn to h3, then everything is stopped. Alright, this was all about the Stafford Gambit, all the tricks, ideas and traps that you can do from the black side, and what are the defenses which looks natural from the white to do but are a slight error, and you can take advantage of it. If you like the content, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, share with your chess friends, and also write down what would you like to learn next from us. Thank you.